Welcome to our deep dive. You're prepping for a new leadership role, right?
Yeah.
And you've shared some key excerpts from the first 90 days. We're
Yeah.
going to unpack Michael Watkins's insights and help you avoid those common pitfalls. Think of this as a crash course
Yeah.
in setting yourself up for success.
This book does not mess around.
No.
Watkins really emphasizes just how much is riding on those first 3 months.
It's true.
He calls it a period of acute vulnerability for a reason.
Yeah. You're under a microscope. Everyone is forming opinions.
It's not just about perception, though.
Well,
Watkins argues that those early decisions have a ripple effect
yeah.
that impacts your team, your boss, and even projects down the line.
Makes sense.
He estimates a new leader's transition impacts about a dozen other people,
Wow.
which is a pretty big deal.
That is a big deal.
Yeah.
So no pressure, listener. But
Yeah.
seriously, let's dive into how to nail this.
Okay.
The excerpts you've provided focus on 3 key areas.
Yeah.
Preparing yourself, accelerating your learning, and matching your strategy to the situation.
Right.
Before we even get to those, though,
Yeah.
there's this idea of letting go that Watkins hammers on.
He does.
It's about leaving behind the habits and mindsets that made you successful in your previous role.
Yeah.
He uses this example of Julia,
Oh, yeah.
who was a marketing superstar but failed miserably leading a product launch because she couldn't adapt.
It's like you need to hit the mental reset button,
Yeah,
regardless of whether you're promoted from within or joining a new company.
totally. And the book gets really granular,
It does.
offering specific advice tailored to each scenario.
Yeah.
For promotions, he talks about the need to balance breadth and depth,
Right.
delegate effectively,
Mm-hmm.
and cultivate a new kind of leadership presence.
Yeah.
Basically, stepping up your game.
Stepping up your game. Exactly.
And for those onboarding into a new company,
Okay.
he compares the experience to an organ transplant.
Oh, wow.
It's about adapting quickly to avoid being rejected by the new system.
That's a good way to put it.
Kind of a scary way to put it.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I think the organ transplant metaphor
Yeah.
really drives home the need for cultural adaptation.
For sure.
Watkins even suggests approaching it like an anthropologist, studying a new tribe.
Interesting.
You need to learn the customs, the
Wow.
rituals,
Right.
the unspoken rules of the game.
All the unwritten rules
Yeah.
to make things a bit easier.
Yeah.
He provides these handy checklists
He does.
for business orientation, stakeholder connections, expectation alignment, and cultural adaptation.
Yep.
Super practical.
Really practical.
But let's be real. No
Yeah.
matter how much prep work you do,
Right.
there's always going to be a fire hose of information
Yeah.
when you start a new role.
You're going to be drinking from a fire hose for sure.
Watkins calls this the action imperative trap.
Oh, yeah.
I know that feeling.
Right.
You're so busy trying to prove yourself to get things done
Yeah.
that you end up making decisions without fully understanding the context.
And that can lead to some major backfires.
Totally.
He tells this story about Chris,
Oh, yeah.
who jumped into solving problems without really grasping the root causes
Right.
and ended up making things worse.
So how do you avoid that trap?
That's the question.
Is it even possible?
Well, Watkins argues that it's not about avoiding information overload altogether,
Okay.
but about being strategic about what you learn and how you learn it.
Right.
He calls this your learning agenda.
So it's about being intentional,
Yeah,
not just reacting to every email and meeting invite that comes your way.
exactly.
And the book provides some really useful tools for
Yeah.
building your learning agenda,
It does.
like a set of questions to ask everyone you meet.
Yeah.
He even has a whole learning plan template.
He does.
But he also emphasizes the importance of talking to people
That's right.
and structuring those conversations effectively.
Yeah.
It's about extracting the right information from the right people.
Right.
So you've done your homework. You've gotten a handle on the information flow.
Yeah,
What's next?
that's where the STARS model comes in.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's a framework for diagnosing the type of transition you're facing.
Okay.
Is it a startup,
Mm-hmm.
a turnaround,
Okay,
accelerated growth, realignment,
got it.
or sustaining success?
And this model isn't just about slapping a label on your situation, right?
Right. It's about understanding that each scenario requires a completely different approach.
Okay.
Like in a turnaround,
Mm-hmm.
you need to move quickly and make tough calls,
Yeah.
almost like a hero swooping in to save the day.
Right.
But in realignment,
Okay.
it's more about building consensus and being a steady hand.
So a very different approach.
Yeah, like a ship captain guiding the course.
Yeah, and I'm remembering that story about Carl,
Oh, yeah.
who had to totally shift his leadership style
You did.
when he moved from a turnaround situation in Europe to a realignment situation in North America.
Exactly.
So very different. And the book provides practical tools for putting the STARS model to work,
It does.
including a diagnostic table to help you map out your own unique transition landscape.
Mm.
It even dives into the psychology of each situation.
Right.
So we've talked about preparing ourselves,
Yeah.
accelerating our learning, and
Right.
understanding the type of transition we're facing.
Right.
What about taking action?
That's where the concept of securing early wins comes in.
Okay.
And Watkins stresses that not all wins are created equal.
So it's not just about checking things off your to-do list.
No.
It's got to be more strategic than that, right?
A good early win needs to align with your boss's priorities
Okay.
and demonstrate the kind of leadership you want to embody.
All right.
He uses the example of Elena,
Okay.
who focused on changing the company culture before delivering any tangible results.
And that sounds like a classic mistake.
Yeah, you can't just waltz in and start changing everything before you've earned some credibility.
Exactly. And the book offers tons of tactical advice
It does.
on how to secure those early wins, depending on your STARS situation.
Right.
It even talks about leveraging your existing reputation to your advantage.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Me too.
You do your prep work. You understand the type of transition you're in.
Right.
You secure some early wins.
Yeah.
What happens next?
That's when you start to tackle the bigger picture,
Okay.
achieving alignment within your organization.
So this is where things get really interesting.
It does get interesting.
Yeah.
This is where Watkins gets into the organizational architecture,
Okay.
strategy,
Mm-hmm.
structure,
Yeah.
processing,
Any bet?
and skill bases.
And these all need to be working together
They do.
to achieve your goals, right?
Exactly.
He uses the example of Hannah,
Oh, right.
who was brought in to fix personnel problems,
Mm-hmm.
but quickly realized the organizational structure itself was the root cause.
It's about addressing those deeper systemic issues.
It reminds me of that saying, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you need to step back and reevaluate the whole system.
You do.
And the book offers some great guidance on how to do that.
It does.
It talks about analyzing processes,
Right.
identifying bottlenecks, closing skill gaps,
Mm-hmm.
even uncovering hidden potential within your team.
Yeah.
So you've got a solid grasp of the organization.
Okay.
You're starting to align the pieces.
Yeah.
Now it's time to build your team, right?
That's right.
And Watkins really hammers home the point
He does.
that early personnel decisions can make or break your success.
So important.
He tells the story of Liam,
Liam. Yeah.
who inherited a team with some serious performance issues
Okay.
and had to make some tough calls right out of the gate.
Right away.
That sounds intense.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to evaluate a team when you're still new to the role?
Well, the book provides a really helpful framework for doing just that.
Okay.
It takes into account functional expertise.
Mhm.
Teamwork needs the STARS mix
Okay.
and the criticality of different positions.
So you've got to look at a lot of different factors.
Yeah. And he also stresses that it's not just about technical skills.
Okay.
You need to assess judgment as well.
So you need to make sure your team members can not only do the work,
Right.
but also make good decisions.
Make good calls. Exactly.
And the book goes beyond just evaluating your team.
Okay.
It also dives into running effective meetings and facilitating decision-making processes.
Important stuff.
Basically, how to set your team up for success.
Right.
Okay, so you've got your team in place.
Yep.
You're starting to make some progress.
Mm-hmm.
But what about influencing those outside your direct control?
Okay.
That's where building coalitions comes in, right?
That's exactly right.
This is where Watkins gets into the nitty-gritty of navigating the political landscape.
Yeah.
He uses the example of Alexia,
Oh, yeah. Alexia.
who struggled to implement a new marketing approach because she didn't secure buy-in from key stakeholders.
It's a classic story.
It's a classic story, right?
Yeah.
You can have the best idea in the world,
Right.
but if you don't have the support of the people who matter,
Yeah.
it's going nowhere.
It's dead in the water.
And the book offers some great advice on how to build those crucial alliances.
Yeah.
It talks about mapping your influence landscape,
Yeah.
understanding motivations,
Mm-hmm.
even identifying potential blocking alliances.
Early alliances.
Those folks who might actively try to sabotage your efforts.
Yeah. You got to watch out for those.
Okay, this is getting really strategic.
It is strategic.
And Watkins doesn't shy away from the tougher aspects of influence.
Right.
He gets into framing arguments effectively, appealing to both logic and emotion,
Yeah.
and understanding the power of social influence.
It's not just about being right. It's about being persuasive.
Exactly. It's about understanding how decisions get made in your organization and who really holds the power.
We're the real decision makers.
And the book provides some really practical guidance
It does.
on how to navigate those complex dynamics.
For sure.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But before we move on,
Okay.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The importance of letting go.
Right.
I think this applies not just to our old ways of working, but also to our need for control.
That's a really insightful point.
Yeah.
In fact, Watkins dedicates a whole chapter to the personal side of transitions,
Oh, wow.
reminding us that we need to take care of ourselves amidst all this change.
It's true.
He calls it keeping your balance.
It's easy to get so caught up in the whirlwind of a new role
Right.
that we forget to prioritize our own well-being.
And that can lead to burnout and bad decisions.
Exactly.
Watkins encourages honest self-reflection, taking the time to analyze past decisions,
Yeah.
both good and bad,
Okay.
and extract valuable lessons.
Makes sense.
He also talks about setting boundaries and being strategic about your time.
Okay.
He calls it judiciously deferring commitment.
It's basically learning to say no gracefully,
It is.
to avoid getting overwhelmed and spreading yourself too thin.
So important.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I remember he also stresses the importance of building a strong advice and counsel network.
He does.
It's about recognizing that you don't have to go it alone.
You don't have to do it all yourself.
He's a big believer in having trusted advisors who can offer different perspectives and support you through those tough decisions.
Exactly.
So we've talked about prepping yourself,
Yeah.
accelerating your learning,
Okay.
matching your strategy to the situation, securing early wins,
Right.
achieving alignment, building your team, creating coalitions,
Okay.
and even keeping your balance.
Yeah. That's a lot.
What's left?
There's one more crucial piece.
Okay.
Zooming out to the organizational level,
Okay.
how can companies build systems to accelerate transitions for everyone,
Right.
not just individual leaders?
Okay, now we're talking about creating a culture of transition success.
We are.
This sounds fascinating.
It is.
Let's dive into that in part 2 of this deep dive.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the first 90 days.
Thanks for having me back.
In part 1, we explored a lot of tactics and strategies
We did.
for navigating your own transition into a new leadership role.
Yeah.
Now let's zoom out
Okay.
and consider how organizations can systematize this process
Okay.
to set everyone up for success.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of a company-wide transition acceleration system.
Yeah,
It sounds like a powerful way to create a culture that embraces change
it is.
and empowers leaders at all levels.
Watkins argues that companies should treat transitions as a strategic priority,
Okay.
not just something that happens in the background.
Right.
And one of the first steps is to identify those areas where transitions are most frequent and impactful.
He calls this creating a transition heat map, right?
Exactly. It's a visual tool
Okay.
that helps organizations see where the hot spots are.
I see.
Are there particular departments or roles
Mhm.
that experience a high turnover rate?
Makes sense.
Are there upcoming mergers or acquisitions
Okay.
that will require significant onboarding and integration?
So it sounds like a risk assessment tool,
Yeah.
but also an opportunity to be proactive
Right.
and allocate resources where they're needed most.
Right. Once you have a clear picture of your transition landscape,
Yeah.
you can start to build a system for supporting those transitions effectively.
And Watkins provides a framework for doing just that, right?
It does.
He talks about developing a common core model
Yeah.
for accelerating transitions.
Yes. And this model starts with establishing a shared language,
Okay.
an understanding of what transitions are, why they matter, and how to navigate them successfully.
So everyone in the organization,
Yeah.
from the CEO to the newest hire,
Right.
is on the same page.
Exactly. It's about creating a common set of expectations
Right.
and providing everyone with a roadmap for success.
And what are some of the key elements
Okay.
of this common core model?
Well, first and foremost, it should include training on the concepts we've been discussing.
Okay.
The STARS model,
Mm-hmm.
the 5 conversations framework,
Right.
the importance of securing early wins, and so on.
So it's about equipping people with the tools and strategies.
It is.
They need to hit the ground running.
Right. And it's not just about theoretical knowledge.
Okay.
This common core model should also include practical resources,
Like what?
like checklists, templates, case studies,
Mhm.
even mentorship programs.
It's about making it easy for people to access the support they need
Yeah.
when they need it.
Exactly. Watkins also stresses the importance of tailoring support to the leader's level.
Okay.
A senior executive transitioning into a CEO role is going to have different needs
Right.
than a first-time manager.
Makes sense that you'd want to calibrate the level of support to the complexity of the transition.
And don't forget about clarifying roles and aligning incentives. Everyone involved in the transition process needs to understand their responsibilities
Okay.
and be motivated to support the new leader's success.
So it's not just about the new leader themselves, it's about creating a culture of support around them.
Absolutely. This could involve incorporating transition support into performance reviews,
Okay.
recognizing and rewarding those who go above and beyond to help others, and even providing training for those who will be mentoring or coaching new leaders.
It's really about making transition success a collective responsibility.
Right. And Watkins also encourages companies to link transition acceleration to their recruiting and leadership development systems.
So it's not just about supporting transitions once they happen, it's
Yeah.
about anticipating them
Right.
and building them into your talent strategy.
Exactly. When you're recruiting new leaders,
Yeah.
you should be thinking about their potential fit with the culture
Okay.
and their ability to adapt to a new environment.
It's about being mindful of transition risk from the outset.
And once a new leader is on board, their transition experience should be integrated into their overall leadership development plan.
Okay.
This could involve providing opportunities to reflect on their journey, identify areas for growth,
Yeah.
and even share their lessons learned with others.
It's almost like turning transitions into a learning opportunity for the entire organization.
That's a great way to put it, by creating a culture that embraces transitions and supports leaders at every stage. Companies can unlock incredible potential for growth and innovation.
I love that it's about moving away from this idea of transitions as something to be feared or endured,
Right.
and instead seeing them as opportunities for growth and renewal.
Yeah.
But let's zoom back into the individual level for a moment.
Okay.
There's one piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet.
What's that?
Managing the relationship with your new boss.
Yes. The all-important boss relationship.
Watkins dedicates a significant portion of the book to this topic.
He does.
And for good reason.
It makes sense, right? Your relationship with your boss can make or break your success in a new role.
And he argues that the first 90 days are critical
They are.
for establishing a strong foundation for this relationship. He even provides this framework for having productive conversations with your new boss, right?
Right.
He calls them the 5 conversations.
Exactly. And while we don't have time to dive into each conversation in detail, I think it's worth highlighting a few key insights.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with the first conversation.
Okay.
The situational diagnosis conversation.
Yeah.
What's the main goal here?
It's all about getting on the same page with your boss
Okay.
about the current state of affairs.
Okay.
You need to understand how they see the situation, what their priorities are,
Right.
and what they see as the biggest challenges and opportunities.
And this isn't just about passively listening to your boss's perspective, right?
Right. It's about bringing your own insights analysis to the table.
Okay.
Remember all that learning you did during your prep work? This is where it comes into play.
So it's about creating a shared understanding of the situation, using the STARS model as a framework for discussion.
Exactly. And Watkins stresses the importance of not just focusing on the hard data, but also on the unspoken dynamics.
Right.
The political landscape, the emotional undercurrents.
It's about reading between the lines
Yeah.
and understanding the nuances of the situation.
Right. And once you've established a shared understanding of the situation,
Yeah.
you can move on to the second conversation,
Okay.
the expectations conversation.
This one feels a bit more delicate.
It can be.
It's about figuring out what your boss expects from you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that this is a two-way conversation.
Okay.
It's not just about your boss dictating their expectations.
Right.
It's also about you clarifying what you need from them to be successful.
So it's about negotiating a clear understanding
It is.
of what success looks like in this role.
Right. What are the key performance indicators? What are the must-win battles? What are the potential landmines to avoid?
And the book stresses that expectations can change over time,
They do.
especially in those early days.
Right.
So it's not a one-and-done conversation.
You've got it's an ongoing process of alignment.
I like that.
And don't be afraid to ask for clarification if something is unclear or if you feel like expectations are shifting.
Right.
It's always better to over-communicate
Yeah.
than to be caught off guard.
This reminds me of that story about Michael.
Oh, yeah,
who
Viking.
proactively managed his new boss's expectations
He did.
by negotiating a 90-day time frame
Smart.
for diagnosis and planning.
That's a great example of how you can take control of the process and set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
By communicating proactively and managing expectations effectively.
Okay, so we've talked about situation and expectations.
Wow.
What about the third conversation?
Okay.
The style conversation.
This one is all about understanding your boss's preferred ways of working and communicating.
Okay.
Are they detail-oriented or big-picture thinkers?
Got it.
Do they prefer formal presentations or informal chats?
Yeah.
Do they value speed or thoroughness?
This is where being observant and adaptable is crucial, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own unique style.
Yeah.
And adapting your approach accordingly.
Right.
Watkins even suggests directly asking your boss about their preferred communication style.
Okay.
And how you can best support them.
That's a great tip. It shows that you're genuinely interested in building a strong working relationship.
Now let's talk about the fourth conversation.
Okay.
Resources.
Resources.
This one is particularly important for leaders who are taking on new responsibilities or building new teams.
It's about having a clear understanding of what you need to be successful in this role, right?
Exactly. What kind of budget do you need?
Okay.
What personnel do you need to hire or reassign?
Right.
What technology or tools do you require?
And this is where building a strong business case is essential.
Absolutely. You need to be able to articulate why you need these resources.
Okay.
And how they will enable you to achieve the agreed-upon goals and expectations.
Watkins also talks about aligning your resource requests with the specific STARS situation you're facing.
Right.
So in a turnaround situation, for example, you might need more upfront resources to make those critical changes quickly.
That's a great point.
No?
The STARS model is a helpful framework for thinking about the types and timing of resources you'll need to be successful.
Okay, so we've covered situation, expectations, style, and resources.
Yeah.
What about the fifth and final conversation?
Okay.
Personal development.
This conversation is about your own growth and development in the role.
Okay.
What are your strengths? What areas do you need to develop? What kind of support do you need from your boss to reach your full potential?
This seems like a conversation that requires a certain level of trust and openness with your boss.
It's a conversation that should happen once you've built a solid rapport with your boss and established a track record of success.
Got it.
Watkins suggests aiming for around the 90-day mark.
And it's not just about focusing on hard skills, right?
Right. Watkins stresses the importance of developing those crucial soft skills.
Okay.
Like cultural and political diagnosis negotiation, coalition building, and conflict management.
Those are the skills that really set leaders apart.
They do.
Especially as they move up in an organization.
Exactly. And Watkins suggests seeking out developmental assignments, projects, or even mentorships to help you hone these skills.
So those are the 5 conversations.
Yeah.
Situational diagnosis, expectations, style, resources, and personal development.
Right.
But what about those of us who have to manage multiple bosses?
Ah, yes. The joys of matrixed organizations.
It's definitely a reality for a lot of leaders these days.
And Watkins doesn't shy away from this complexity.
Okay.
He acknowledges that managing multiple bosses adds another layer of difficulty.
Yeah.
But he argues that the same principles apply. You need to be mindful of balancing perceived wins and losses among your bosses.
Right.
If one boss has significantly more power, it might make sense to bias yourself slightly in their direction early on.
I see.
But be sure to address the balance later.
So it's almost like a juggling act.
It is.
Making sure everyone feels heard and that expectations are being met.
Precisely. And Watkins recommends completing a version of the 5 conversations table.
Okay.
For each of your bosses.
Okay.
To map out their perspectives and identify any areas of convergence or divergence.
That's a really practical tip. It helps you see the big picture and develop a strategy for managing those relationships effectively.
Now let's shift gears for a moment.
Okay.
And talk about another important aspect of transitioning into a new leadership role.
Right.
Managing your team.
This is where a lot of leaders struggle.
They do.
Especially if they're moving from an individual contributor role to a management position.
And Watkins offers some really helpful guidance on how to navigate those early days as a new manager.
One of the things he emphasizes is the importance of being deliberate and thoughtful about how you evaluate your team.
Right. You're inheriting a team that was likely built by someone else, and you need to assess whether the current structure
Yeah.
Roles and skill sets are aligned with your vision and goals.
He provides a framework for doing this right.
He does.
It takes into account things like functional expertise,
Mm-hmm.
teamwork needs,
Yeah.
the stars mix,
Right.
and the criticality of different positions.
Exactly. And he stresses that it's not just about technical skills.
Right.
You need to assess judgment as well.
So you need to make sure your team members can not only do the work,
Yeah.
but also make good decisions.
Make good calls, exactly.
And Watkins provides some interesting techniques for quickly and effectively assessing judgment,
He does.
even in those early days when you're still getting to know your team.
Right.
And he also provides some great advice on running effective team meetings
Uh-huh.
and facilitating decision-making processes.
It's about setting the stage for a high-performing team from day one.
I think this is especially important for new managers
Yeah.
who might be feeling a bit insecure in their role.
Absolutely. It's about establishing credibility.
Yeah.
And demonstrating that you have the skills and experience to lead effectively.
Now, I want to touch on a topic that's increasingly relevant for leaders today:
Okay.
managing remote teams.
This is definitely a challenge,
Yeah.
especially in those early days when you're trying to build relationships and establish trust.
And Watkins offers some really helpful advice on how to do this effectively.
He does.
He emphasizes the importance of over-communicating
Okay.
and being incredibly deliberate about creating those water cooler moments,
Right.
even if they're virtual.
Exactly. You need to be intentional about building rapport and creating a sense of connection,
Yeah.
even if you're not physically in the same space.
And he also highlights the importance of scheduling regular in-person meetings,
Yes.
even if it requires travel, especially in those early days.
Those face-to-face interactions are crucial for building trust
Yeah.
and establishing a strong foundation for the relationship.
So we've talked about managing your boss, managing your team, and managing remotely.
We have.
Are we missing anything?
Well, there's one more piece of the puzzle we haven't touched on yet.
Okay, what's that?
Securing early wins.
Ah, yes, the importance of demonstrating your competence
Right.
and building momentum early on.
Exactly. And Watkins argues that early wins are crucial for establishing credibility and setting the tone for your tenure.
But it's not just about any win, right?
Right. A good early win should align with your boss's priorities,
Okay.
be achievable within a reasonable time frame,
Mm.
and demonstrate the behaviors and values you want to cultivate in your team or organization.
I remember that cautionary tale of Elena, who focused on changing the leadership culture
Yeah.
before securing any performance improvements.
Right.
And it ultimately undermined her efforts.
That's a great example of how a well-intentioned effort can backfire if it's not sequenced strategically.
Right.
Watkins suggests focusing on securing those tangible, measurable wins
Okay.
that demonstrate your ability to deliver results,
Right.
and then leveraging that credibility to drive those more nuanced cultural changes.
So it's about being strategic and prioritizing those wins
Yeah,
that will have the most impact in those early days.
precisely. And the book also talks about the importance of understanding your existing reputation
Yeah.
and using it to your advantage.
That's interesting. So if you have a reputation for being a strong collaborator, for example,
Yeah.
you might focus on securing a win that involves building a cross-functional coalition or forging a new partnership.
Exactly. It's about aligning your early wins with your strengths and leveraging your existing reputation to build credibility and momentum.
And the book provides specific advice for different types of wins,
It does.
depending on the stars situation you're facing.
Right. So in a turnaround situation, a quick win might involve identifying a critical cost-saving measure
Okay.
or implementing a process improvement that yields immediate results.
Right.
In a startup situation.
Yeah.
It might involve securing funding, attracting key talent,
Okay.
or landing a major early customer.
It's about tailoring your approach to the specific demands of the situation.
And it's important to celebrate those early wins,
Okay.
both with your team and with your boss.
It's about building momentum and creating a sense of positive energy.
Exactly. And it's about setting the stage for continued success in the months and years to come.
This has been such a helpful conversation.
It has been.
We've covered so much ground, from personal strategies for navigating transitions to organizational systems for supporting leaders at all levels.
We've talked about the importance of preparation, aligning your strategy to the situation,
Right.
securing early wins, building your team, creating coalitions, keeping your balance,
Yeah.
and even managing the all-important relationship with your boss.
But there's one final piece we need to explore:
What's that?
achieving alignment within your organization.
Okay.
Let's dive into that in part 3 of this deep dive.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the first 90 days.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From personal strategies to team dynamics.
Yeah.
And even touched upon company-wide initiatives.
Right.
Now let's focus on achieving alignment within your organization.
Okay.
This is where Watkins challenges us to think beyond individual actions.
Right.
And encourages us to think systematically about transitions. He argues that transitions are not just isolated events, but rather an inherent part of organizational life.
It's like acknowledging that change is constant.
Yeah.
And creating a framework for navigating it effectively.
Exactly. And one of the tools he introduces is the transition heat map.
Right.
We touched upon this briefly earlier.
We did.
Can you remind us what that is and how it can be helpful?
It's a visual representation that helps you identify the areas in your organization where transitions are most frequent or impactful. These could be departments with high turnover, roles with steep learning curves, or even teams undergoing significant restructuring.
So it's like a diagnostic tool that helps you see where the potential pressure points are.
Precisely. By mapping out those hot spots, you can proactively allocate resources, provide targeted training, and even adjust your onboarding processes to minimize disruption and maximize success.
Right.
Instead of reacting to transitions as they happen, you're anticipating them and planning for them.
It sounds like a powerful way to shift from a reactive to a proactive mindset.
Exactly. And once you have a clear picture of your transition landscape, Watkins suggests creating a company-wide transition acceleration system. It sounds daunting.
Yeah, a little bit.
But he breaks it down into manageable steps.
So what's the first step in building such a system?
It starts with taking stock of what's already in place. What kind of support are you currently offering to people going through transitions? Are there formal onboarding programs, mentorship opportunities, or even coaching resources available?
So it's about understanding your baseline.
It is.
So it's like doing an inventory
of
your existing resources and processes.
Exactly. Once you understand what you're already doing, you can identify gaps and opportunities for improvement.
And once you've done that, Watkins suggests developing a common core model for accelerating transitions.
He does.
What are the key elements of this model?
The foundation is having a shared language and framework for thinking about transitions. This is where the concepts we've been discussing come in handy. The STARS model, the 5 conversations framework, the importance of securing early wins. Everyone in the organization, from senior leaders to new hires, should be familiar with these concepts.
It's like creating a common vocabulary and a shared understanding of how to navigate transitions effectively.
This common core model should also include a toolkit of resources that people can access as needed throughout their transition journey.
Got it.
This might include checklists, templates, case studies, even online courses or workshops.
It's about providing practical support that goes beyond just theory and concepts.
Exactly. And as we discussed earlier, it's also important to match the level of support to the leader's level. A senior executive transitioning into a CEO role will need a different kind of support than a first-time manager.
It's about calibrating the support to the complexity of the transition and the individual's needs.
And don't forget about clarifying roles and aligning incentives.
Everyone involved in the transition process needs to understand their responsibilities and be motivated to support the new leader's success.
This gets back to the idea of making transition success a collective responsibility.
Exactly. It's not just the new leader's job to succeed. It's everyone's job to support them.
Watkins also talks about linking transition acceleration to recruiting and leadership development systems.
So it's not just about supporting transitions once they happen.
No.
It's about anticipating them and building them into your talent strategy.
When recruiting new leaders, companies should consider not just the candidate's skills and experience, but also their potential fit with the culture and their ability to adapt to a new environment.
So you're not just hiring for the role. You're hiring for the transition.
Exactly. And once a new leader is on board, their transition experience should be integrated into their overall leadership development plan. This could involve regular check-ins, opportunities for reflection, mentorship, even 360-degree feedback.
It's about turning the transition into a valuable learning experience
Is it?
that accelerates the leader's growth and development.
Precisely by weaving transition support into your talent management systems. You're creating a culture where transitions are seen as opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
Not just hurdles to overcome.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the first 90 days.
It really has.
We've explored everything from personal preparation and stakeholder management to building high-performing teams and creating a company-wide culture of transition success.
We've covered a lot.
We have, and while we've only scratched the surface of what this book has to offer, we hope this deep dive has given you a solid foundation
I think so.
for navigating your own transitions.
For sure.
And inspiring you to champion transition success within your organization.
Absolutely.
Remember, transitions are an inevitable part of life and work.
They are.
They can be challenging, but there are also opportunities for growth, innovation, and renewal.
I agree.
By embracing the principles and tools we've discussed today, you can turn these potentially turbulent times into springboards for success. We encourage you to revisit the book, explore the resources we've mentioned, and most importantly, put these insights into action.
Yeah, take action.
Your future self will thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We wish you all the best in your own transition journey.
Best of luck out there.